Hey, it's your host Tinto, and I have exciting news to share with you before we get into this weekend's episode. The romantic dramedy fiction podcast called Private Affairs, inspired by true events, is now live. In season 1, Veronica, also known as V, a recent male-born transplant from Zimbabwe, unexpectedly finds herself in a situation with a charming Aussie doctor. She quickly has to learn how to keep her wig on when things get sexy, as well as navigate other complexities of an intercultural relationship. This project is sponsored by the Victorian Government of Australia through Creative Victoria and will be available wherever you get your podcasts. For more information, head over to www.privateaffairspod.com. I'm in. You should. In this weekend's episode, we talk about themes such as emotional abuse and suicide that some listeners may find triggering. Please consider skipping this episode if discussions of this nature are likely to cause you distress.
Is that a breakup? I think we have a situation right here. On Feeling Station.
Hello?
Hey, what's happening?
Hi, nothing
The time
much.
is now. This is happening right now.
Yep.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm a little nervous, a little tired. I wasn't even I went out with some friends last night, but I came home early and then I fell asleep in my clothes because I was so tired. I wasn't even dressed, but I fell asleep in my clothes.
And then you've had to get up early to do this. I don't envy you one bit. But about the nerves, I'll give you some comforting words. Everybody says that they're feeling a bit nervous, but by the time the episode ends, they're like, oh, what, it's over already? I'm like, yeah, it was that good, wasn't it? So don't even worry about the nerves. The only thing I'd say worry about is not saying your name.
Okay.
But if you do say your name, don't worry. I'll sort that out in post-production. I'll bleep it out.
Okay.
For those listening to this podcast for the first time, it's the Feeling Station, and we touch on breakup stories that people would like to talk about with a view to give you lessons that you can learn from my guest experience. And one of the things why the podcast is doing great is I do my best to keep my guests anonymous, which brings me to the fun part, well, for me at least. That's the part where I give you the name that you're going to use for the duration of this episode. Are you ready for your name?
Yes, I am.
So, have you got a pen and paper?
I do.
Great. So, I'm giving you a name from the Kingdom of Lesotho, right? Which is a tiny little country within the borders of South Africa. And your name is Lerato, which is Lerato.
Okay.
Rato.
Okay.
Lerato. And that's in a language known as Sotho. And that name actually means love.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of cute, huh?
Yeah, that's lovely. I like that.
So when you think about your story, who do you think was more in love than the other, you or the guy you're going to talk about?
So actually, it's not a guy, it's a woman.
Oh, it's a woman.
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Awesome. So who did you feel you were more in love with? I mean, who was more in love? Was it you or she was?
I think she was, for certain. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I guess we're going to dig into that as we get into the story, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool beans. Now, this is the fun part for you too. What name are you going to give her for the duration of this episode?
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask me that. So
Standard procedure.
Yep. So I think I'm going to go with the name Sira, which is actually the Persian word for sun.
Oh, really?
And the reason I'm going to go with that, I mean, I have Persian roots, but so I think that the sun is like very powerful, right? But in very bad ways and in very good ways.
Ooh.
So we're walking with that duality in this story. So I kind of want to wanted the name to reflect that. Yeah.
I really like this and the meaning behind everything. So, Sira, how do I spell that? Is that Sira?
It's Cyrah.
Oh, Sira, that is dope. Okay, cool. So the today's story is about Sira and Lerato.
Yes.
Right. Now, on to the second bit. Why this podcast is doing great is that there are some real life lessons that people learn from the story you're going to share. So what is it that you would like people to take away from what you're going to tell us today?
Yeah. Well, I also thought a lot about this too, because it is a very long-winded story with lots of nuances and things. So I wanted to pull out just a few things that I think were very important to me as I've reflected on this relationship journey and breakup journey as well. So my first one is that there are two very real truths to every single experience. So whether that be a relationship or whatever, everybody says there's two sides to every story, but I kind of think that there are two truths, not really sides. You know, everybody's living their experience in their own way. And so that's something I had to learn from.
Do you know, that is really deep, and I've never really thought about it that way, because when people say there's two sides to a coin, it makes it sound as if there's a good side and a bad side.
Yeah.
You know, whereas this one is saying that there are two truths to the story and to every experience, because you live your truth of that experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is dope. Okay. Number two.
Okay, so that's my first one. And my second one is don't seek external validation for internal needs.
Oh, you know what, man? You're dropping some crazy college words and expressions in there. So don't seek external validation for internal needs. Man, deep.
And I think a more simple way, I guess, to put that is just don't use relationships to fill gaps for things that are unmet in your life that you need help with. Don't use relationships to sort of fill that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really like that. Do you have a third one?
Yeah, so my third one is don't be afraid to leave a situation that doesn't fill your cup, no matter what, because that could end up making you the codependent one.
Yeah. For a lot of people, that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not, yeah.
Because you have emotional attachments to people, physical attachment, and sometimes leaving those just creates the whole gap that you mentioned, to say that people shouldn't try and get, filled.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's so great that you said, I mean, it's a cycle, right? It's like kind of having to grapple with that. It's like, well, if I leave, what if this and this and that happens? And it's hard, I think that majority of the story I'm going to tell you kind of highlights that. It's really hard to leave. But when you do, it's an adjustment, and, you always come out on top. Both people do. Yeah.
Nice. So those are 3 lessons. Did you have more, or you want to leave it at those, and perhaps we might pick up some as we go?
I think we'll pick up some as we go too. I think one of the, maybe a sort of a side lesson, a sub-lesson is recognize patterns. And they're usually what your gut tells you is usually correct. But I think that that's a pretty common one that we hear. Yeah.
And the number of times that we hear this thing just says to me, the gut is such a difficult thing to tune into and trust.
Yeah.
And the more I listen to these stories, it's starting to feel like that might be related to the experiences we have, as individuals. I've had an ex, where she would disappear after a certain time, usually around 8 p.m. every day. And my gut used to tell me this is not right. But because I had another ex who would also vanish about the same time before, I thought this was the norm. So my gut constantly told me, dude, this is a problem. But my previous experiences kind of dictated it was the norm. So this recognizing patterns and listening to what your gut says is a great thing, but it continually comes up on the episodes because it's nearly impossible to do.
Yeah.
If there was somebody who was a gut coach, I would go to that coach every day and say, teach me how to listen to this damn thing because I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we have one experience that's wrong and we do trust our gut, we're like, it discredits us.
That's it. Then you're like, nah, I knew it. I shouldn't have listened to it, because it literally screwed me over.
Exactly.
Dope. So I'll play back those 4 lessons. First one is up. There are 2 truths to every experience. Then lesson number 2, don't seek external validation for internal needs. In other words, don't use relationships to fill gaps with things unmet in your life. Third one up, don't be afraid to leave a situation that doesn't fill your cup. And last but not least, recognize patterns. What your gut tells you is usually correct, and listen to it. Right, cool. Let's get into it. So tell me about how you met Sira. Did you say Sira? Sira
or Sira, whatever
cool.
works. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me how you met Sira and how you guys got connected.
So we actually met in university, so at uni, and we actually met my second year of uni, and we were the same year. didn't really, I went to a very small school, so, you kind of know of everybody, but I like to mind my business.
Mhm.
I really do. I think that when I don't for even 1 second, it gets me in a lot of trouble, so I mind my business.
Okay.
But I met her one day through new friends that I had been making. My first year of uni, for a lot of people, I think it's pretty difficult, to find your footing and your grounding and the people that, that you're going to be friends with for a long time. So I was figuring that out, and I met her through them, and I was also, something to preface too, I was exploring what my sexuality meant to me. I always sort of knew that I wasn't, this, I think sexuality is extremely fluid. I really have that belief, but I was still figuring that out. I was in that, I was unsure, right?
Yeah.
But I was very open, to new experiences. So as soon as I met her, I was like, okay, I understand what's going on in my brain. I think this person is so beautiful.
Yeah.
They're so fun. They had this aesthetic that for me, I was like, okay. When I was little, I thought I wanted to be these people, because be like this person, that skatery type of vibe, all of that. But no, I think it was just because I was in love with those people when I was younger.
You just didn't know it at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just couldn't place it. And so I met her through those friends, and we talked a little bit. I also am horrible at knowing when somebody likes me. I'm like, oh, everybody's friendly, just like me. It's fine.
Okay.
But, we started to talk a little bit more and more. And then, she kind of pulled me aside and was like, I really like you.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh my gosh, me too.
Ooh, nice.
What would you know? And so, we kind of went through this very intense sort of first few weeks together.
So before she said, I like you, you liked her already.
Yeah.
What stopped you from telling her?
I think it was because it was a new experience for me. I'd known about her a little bit also, which I will say she had just gotten out of a relationship with somebody else.
Yeah.
And, small school, there's lots of, rumors going around. But those rumors were actually true. So she had cheated on her last girlfriend. And that's basically what brought their relationship to an end. And she was going through a tough time just because she was, her friend group was based in her relationship with this other person. So she'd lost all of her friends.
Yikes.
Plus her partner at the time.
So before you discovered that you liked her, did you know the story already, or you found out the story after you guys got together?
No, I knew this before. I did. Yeah.
Now, the reason why I asked that question is that, so you knew that she had come out of a relationship because she had cheated on someone.
Yeah, I did know.
So at some point when you were starting to figure out just how much you feel about her, didn't you think, maybe this might be a bad idea because potentially she might cheat on me too?
I absolutely did, but her charm is just really...
You got hit by the charm,
I did. And I was sort of caught up in a new experience too. I'd gotten attention from I guess more male identifying people my entire life. And this was something new for me. And it felt really nice, so
you're caught up in the whole storm, of emotions, the excitement of the experience, the excitement of discovering what you liked at the time and so forth. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Got it.
Yes.
So she's like, I like you. And then you're like, oh yeah, I like you too.
Yeah. And so started this, this just compassionate, passionate, intense, just there's a stereotype that lesbians after a week together, after a week of knowing each other, they move in together. That's a stereotype, which I don't condone stereotypes. But in this situation, it was very much like that. We very much.
It was your reality at that time.
Yeah, it was my reality. Exactly.
So, whenever I've started a relationship, I've always tried to be clear that there's a point that there's a date and a moment I can point back to and say, this is when we got together. Did you two have that date that clearly said, okay, this is when we got together? Or you're just like, we like each other so much, it doesn't matter, we're doing this?
Oh, so basically, when we had talked about it, she had pointed it from the very first time that we like kissed each other. I don't agree with that. Now looking back on it, just because. So I will tell you a story. Like I will tell you sort of how it progresses, which I think might answer your question. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, cool, perfect. Go for it.
So after a few weeks together, I am in this like total state of bliss. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm being treated so well. She was really happy because I think that she, again, she had somebody now so she wasn't as worried about making new friends, about having this gap of, not having friends.
Yeah.
I think she put sort of her time spent with me was sort of filled in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one night where I decided to go out with some of my friends who were older than me, and so they wanted to go out into the city, and so I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. And she stayed behind with actually my best friend at the time, so that'll become relevant in 1 second. And so I'm out. I'm having a great time with my friends. And mind you, we'd only been speaking to each other for a few weeks, right? But we were very much into one another.
Yeah.
But we hadn't said, oh, we're going to be in a relationship, right? And so
this was friends with benefits at that moment.
Really, not really friends with benefits. There was an intense connection. Like I would say we were seeing each other. I wouldn't say that we were in a relationship. I wouldn't say that we were friends with benefits. There was a lot of emotion there.
So what was it?
I guess a situationship. I guess I don't know.
Okay, I like that. Okay.
But there were very intense feelings involved. And so I come home, from this night of going out, having a great time with my friends. And I think I had to go back to her room, to her dorm room to grab some of my shoes or something like that. I had left something in her room.
Yeah.
And I'm going, because it's very late at night. I'm expecting to be very quiet. I'm expecting her to be there asleep.
Yeah.
She hadn't been answering her phone, so I just assumed, oh, she's sleeping. She doesn't leave her door, locked. We had talked about it before. She said, if you ever need anything, you can go into my room. That doesn't feel like a boundary for me.
Okay.
And so I went in to grab it, and she wasn't there. And so naturally, I was like, okay, a little bit worried. But she has her own life autonomy. She can do whatever she wants. But so then I get a call from her, and she goes, "Oh, I'm in your best friend's room." And I said, "What?" For a second, I said, "Okay." So I'm walking back, and my best friend's room was actually right next to mine. I walk back, and I knock on the door, and Cedar opens the door with no clothes on.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, "What? What is it? What's happening?" Yeah. So I come to find out, obviously, that the two of my best friend and Cedar had slept together.
So, how long had Cedar known your best friend for?
Not long at all. She basically met through us.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did she know who was knocking on the door when she opened the door?
I think they were both, pretty intoxicated. So I'm not.
Yeah. Okay.
So naturally, I'm like, oh my goodness. I was very upset, and I think in that moment I realized how much I liked her too.
Yeah.
But it just felt like this betrayal on both parts. And I'm not going to sit here and say that she cheated on me or anything like that, because we'd never had this conversation of, okay, we're in a monogamous relationship. But it was very dramatic for me at the time.
I can imagine.
It felt really hard.
Something for me feels very adventurous about Cedar and your best friend, because you said your best friend's room was right next to yours, right?
Yeah.
So at any time you could have walked in to get into your room and just check in on your best friend anyway to say hey, and you could have busted them.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, I sort of did, right? They're right in the middle of, getting it on.
Yeah. That takes a lot of guts. I would
Yeah.
think. I mean, if I was to decide to cheat, I wouldn't be doing right next to a girlfriend's house or girlfriend's room.
Yeah.
That is way too close. Unless I like the sensation of danger and the feeling of danger, in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that.
So what was at play there?
The thing is, right, I had talked to her a little bit, like in the weeks before that, about what had happened in her previous relationship. Like I just wanted to know. I just wanted to understand. I don't think that every single person who cheats on somebody is a bad person. I really don't. I think that people make mistakes, and that there was something there that drove you to do that. I mean, there's a lot of people who cheat just because they're not nice people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to sort of figure out, okay, what was happening? What were the nuances there? What was your truth? Like, please tell me, if you're comfortable. And she just basically said that, she felt like she was, like suffocated in that relationship. She couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And she's not from the US. She's actually international. She's an international student. So she said, when I went back home, I just felt like I could breathe again. And so I asked her, well, why didn't you just break up with, your partner?
Yeah.
She was like, I felt like I couldn't get out. I felt like I couldn't. And this was the only way that I could, get out.
Wow. I really like that, because that ties in directly into lesson number 3, which is don't be afraid to leave a situation that doesn't fill your cup.
Right.
And whilst I know that wasn't your lesson, it was, Sida's lesson, it's very relevant. Leaving a situation is not as easy as just leaving, is it?
Yeah, it's not, which will become apparent in our, it's a lesson that I learned myself in this relationship too.
Okay.
And so basically after that, I thought, you know what, I'm done with the both of these people. I cannot, I don't know how to process this, right? Like I can't. But after, just to speed the story up a little, I basically forgave them both.
Why did you do that?
I mean, I think a lot of it was fear, especially for my best friend. I didn't want to lose somebody that was so important to me. I really didn't.
But they were prepared to lose you by by getting with your person, so they didn't put you first in the same way that you're putting them first now. So really, why did you do it?
I mean, like I think that sometimes around certain friendships, relationships, I'm an anxious person myself. So I didn't want, and the thing is, the both of them did a lot of work to sort of get me to forgive and move on. I'm not going to say that they didn't, because they both of them really, really did. And so I sort of was like, okay, I'm also in this situation, whereas if I forgive one of them, I'm feeling like I need to forgive the both of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because it feels unfair.
Yeah.
And also, so the two of them were connected to my friends. It just felt like really messy, right? So for me, in my mind, I was like, okay, let me just make everybody happy and let me just forgive. And so that I can move on. So it's not in my headspace anymore. Which ultimately I don't think was the correct decision, but I did anyway.
Okay.
Just to sort of get it out of just to move on, I forgave.
I mean, did you really manage to move on though?
No, I did not. Which, I ended up resenting her so much because of this one thing that she had done.
Who? Your best friend or Sida?
Sida.
Yeah.
My best friend, there's a whole other, she was battling with a lot of like mental health issues, things like that. So she actually left university for a year or two.
Okay.
And so we've worked on our relationship separately. But I sort of moved on with Sida while my best friend wasn't really there in the picture anymore. She wasn't physically in our space.
Question for you. Did trust issues come into play now?
Yes, exactly. That was a big thing that happened in our relationship. But basically after I, forgave, not forgave, I guess after we stopped talking about it as much. Let me put it like that. I'm not going to say forgave. I'm struggling to find the correct word because I definitely didn't forgive. I mean, okay, so as I tried to forget about it, we continued with a relationship. It was fine, it was rocky at times, but there was still like an immense amount of love that she had for me. She would do very sweet things. She cared about me a lot and tended to me a lot. I was struggling with some chronic like health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like she was really there for me in that context. And it was good, that we would have some very explosive fights that honestly I felt like circled back to this betrayal that I felt, right? Like I was like, you slighted me and I feel horrible, right? But I tried, I also recognized that I liked her so much. I was like, okay, she's tried really hard. She hasn't done anything since, and in the back of my mind, I was like, she cheated on her last partner and she basically did the same thing again to me after even a few weeks. That was in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
But it was fine. And then our winter break comes around and we actually, by total coincidence, were both going back to her home country.
Ooh.
I was doing some work, like with a nonprofit in her country, and she was going home obviously to visit her family.
Yeah.
And she wasn't out. She hadn't told her parents about her sexuality. So her parents now they know, but they didn't at that point. This was back in 2017.
Yeah.
And so, we both made plans to be like, okay, well, it's the new year. Maybe I should come over to you just for a few days. I could probably take a few days off of, volunteering with this nonprofit and come and see you. And, I met her friends, I met her family, they all, we all got along. I felt like, I felt good about being in her space. But again, this is in the back of my mind. I'm also struggling, right, with my own sexuality and how to deal with being in a relationship, like with a woman, all of these things. And so I'm like struggling with this, but also feeling like extremely suffocated, by the type of love that she was giving me. It was very much a like, I don't want to say controlling type of love, but that's kind of how it was. It was sort of like, because she didn't have any friends, it was really just me. She would get angry at me, when I would go out with my friends or when I would do things with my friends.
Yeah.
And I also was, I was studying to go to medical school. So you're always studying.
It's very demanding. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very demand. And then, I also played sports in college. So I was trying to make time for my friends, for my sports, for my studies, and also manage this relationship that was really beginning to sort of take a toll on me, not only for, the reasons of what I've mentioned, but just the way that she was. It was very demanding. And I felt like...
it's interesting that you say it's very demanding because it is in terms of time.
Yeah.
But, apart from you thinking about what happened in the past constantly, it's also this awareness you now have that this person depends on you.
Right. And it was just this emotional drain too of like, if you don't spend time with me in the way that I want, in the amount that I want, then I take love away from you.
Wow.
And so that was hard for me because I've experienced a lot of trauma in previous relationships. So and trauma in that way of sort of like, if you don't give me what I want, then I take love away from you.
Yikes. So for you already, that's a trigger issue, isn't it?
Yeah. I think about in 80% of the relationship when we were together, I felt constantly triggered of like going home and being like home as in like to our dorm room, my dorm room.
Yeah.
And being like, I don't know what version of her I'm going to get. Is she going to be happy or is she going to be upset that I was 20 minutes late to a dinner date that we had planned because I was with friends?
No. If you're constantly feeling this level of suffocation, the whole cancel culture that is prevalent now would, in the blink of an eye, say leave.
No.
So
I don't.
Why couldn't you have left at that time? What was holding you back so that you wouldn't have this burden on your shoulders?
I was afraid. I really was, because not only was she struggling with mental health. If I tried to leave a few times, and obviously I could have tried harder, but she would lock herself in her dorm room and attempt to like take pills, and drink alcohol with them so that, and she would basically say, if you leave me, I'll kill myself or I'll die. So using language like that, which in when you're in that moment, right? I can understand, right? Like of, somebody like me, my feelings were, oh my gosh, if she's in a bad place and if I leave, I'll make it worse, You
were literally trapped.
Yeah, so I really felt extremely, extremely trapped. And when I was in her respective country doing my work, I met this person, and she also, it's important to the story to mention that whenever we went to her respective country, she said to me, I want to be in an open relationship.
Oh, she said that to you?
Yeah. And I said, why?
Yo, that's a big thing to say.
Yeah, it was a big red flag to me.
Massive.
Right. And she also told me about a few people that she had been involved with back at home.
What does involved mean?
So the person that she cheated on her previous girlfriend with is from her home country.
Oh.
So my mind immediately went there.
Yeah.
And that was my gut feeling that I should have trusted. But I said to her, okay, we can be in an open relationship, but we can't be involved with anybody that we've been involved with before.
Okay, so what did open relationship for you guys mean? Did it mean you could flirt with somebody else, or you could actually sleep with that person? Go the whole 9 yards.
It was never defined. It was never, I tried. I said, well, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Let's set some ground rules. But it was very vague, very unclear. And so I sort of was just trying to just ignore it and I was like, who am I going to meet, really?
Okay.
When I'm doing this,
So just whilst you're on this, you were in medical school, right? At this point?
No, so I was in uni at this time. So in America, you do 4 years of like university and then 4 years of medical school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where I was going to go with that was, if you have been in med school at that time, I think you need to be very thorough with your stuff, with your findings, at least so that your diagnosis is as accurate as possible. Then you know how to treat someone.
Right.
So if that was the frame of thinking at the time, you would have taken that opportunity to dig real deep and say, okay, Sita, I really want to understand what this means. But it felt as if you took a shallow approach to inquire all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's felt as if other bits and pieces from before were always on the surface. Now, do you generally tend to take things on the surface, or you can go deep if you need to?
I think now I do my best to go as deep as possible because I think like open communication is key. Apparently I didn't do that enough, in this relationship. But I also think that I didn't because I was so tired. I was so emotionally drained from everything that was happening that I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
And so then we get there, I'm doing my thing, and she all of a sudden says to me, oh, I don't want to be in an open relationship anymore. I want us to be. And it seems like it's going back and forth.
Oh my gosh.
And then,
but what did you say when she said that? Were you like, okay?
Well, so basically what happened was she said, I don't want to be in an open relationship. And I said, you know what? I don't think I want to be either. I was feeling really uncomfortable about that. I'm glad that you said something. But then 2 days later, she's taking a trip to a different country. So she's going to a different country and goes, actually, I do want to be in an open relationship again.
Come on.
And I said to her, you know what? I actually just need a complete break from you. I can't do this. I was like, I'm feeling so trapped, so suffocated, and I'm feeling like you're controlling me.
Yeah.
And again, it comes with crying on the phone, which, that's a normal response. You can cry if you want, but then comes
I'm going to kill
myself if you don't, if you're not with me, blah, 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 all these things. And I just sort of was like, I just need space. I'm not saying that we're breaking up. I just need this time to be away from you.
Yeah.
But so when I'm working in this nonprofit, I meet this person who, and I can't describe it to you to an extent that's going to make you feel what I felt.
Okay.
But honestly, it felt like, oh my goodness, this person is a breath of like fresh air.
Really?
This person, like, and it was, you know, when you meet those people that you're able to just
be yourself
around.
Yeah.
And it feels like you've known them forever. That was what this person did for me. And I think that it probably was absolutely was amplified because I was going through such a hard time with
Sira. Yeah.
And I think also this comes the lesson of don't seek this external validation for these internal needs of like feeling like controlled comes into play too.
Right.
But this person was just amazing, and we took it very slow. I didn't really mention to him that I had, that I was dealing with this. But I also didn't think that I really had to, because he'd mentioned to me, oh, like I have a girlfriend where I'm from. So I didn't even think of him in a sexual way, like at all.
So in what way was it making you feel amazing then?
I just think
if it didn't have a sexual component to it.
Well, I think that, a lot of my friendships that I have make me feel amazing and fill my cup in a lot of different ways. But I think this definitely felt, for me, there was like a sexual component, but I didn't feel because this person had a partner, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to act on that. And he's not going to act on it because he has a partner.
But did you find him physically attractive though?
Yes,
you
absolutely.
Okay,
I did. Okay. So I think that was a little bit of excitement too.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, we had bonded, we had gone on, like we were on this beautiful mountain basically. And so we had gone on runs together, hikes together, talked about life, like all of these things. And we've been working obviously a lot together. And then one day we're just sort of like sitting, I can't remember exactly where we were, but I think we were outside at like the one little bar that they had on this entire little, in this tiny island.
Yeah.
And he goes, so I broke up with my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, I should probably mention to you that I had a partner. And we are sort of, on a break. We are taking it. And so...
Yeah.
And basically then we both sort of were like, I really like you.
What, he said that?
We both sort of did. It was sort of like...
Well, you wouldn't have said it at the same time. Someone said it before the other. Who said it first?
He said it first.
Okay.
I'm letting other people... I think there's a fear of me letting other people take the lead.
Okay. And then you're like, I like you too?
Yep. And basically, this was over the course of a few days, and I was leaving in a few days after that to go back to the States.
Yeah.
But like that didn't really matter. We talked a lot about sort of what we were going to do, like long distance wise. And I sort of was like, I don't think that I'm in a place to have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
Number one, because we've only really known each other for a week, and we live on like opposite sides of the world. So that doesn't, for me, like I told him, I was like, I can't do long distance. I know I'm not good at that. It's just going to feel like a strain. I don't want to feel like I'm limiting you. I don't want to feel limited. So we didn't, pursue a relationship further, but obviously we didn't stop speaking to one another when I got back. But this becomes my mistake now, because I'm feeling like I get back to the States, all of my friends are, in the same place, they're connected to Sira, all these things. So I'm sort of grappling with, okay, what do I do now, right? Like I met this person, but I also have this person who I'm not trying to say I didn't have feelings for.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely did, but there's just this element of constantly feeling trapped and controlled.
Yeah.
And being afraid to leave because I knew that it didn't fill my cup, but also knowing, like, not being really emotionally ready to handle all of those implications of what it meant to leave. So basically, I didn't stop talking to this person. We'll call him Sam.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But I, was sort of beginning to start up this relationship again with Sira, because I was feeling like, the rhetoric of I'll die without you, and also like seeing like physical, like bruises on her body of self-harm. all of these things, feeling like really trapped by that. And that's not an excuse for what I did. Still like continuing this like emotional connection with Sam, but also having Sira right in my immediate space.
I mean, but between the two of you, that was okay in quotes, because remember, she said, "Let's be open. Let's not be open. Okay, let's be open." So at this point, you guys were still in the open space. So you and Sam are not really bad for your type of arrangement because Sira had said you guys can be open. So why were you feeling bad?
Well, I was feeling bad because when I came back to the States, she asked me, can we be together again? And I said yes, but I didn't stop speaking to Sam.
Yeah, but she didn't say you guys should stop being open, so you would have been okay anyway.
Well, she was also sort of the way that we had, when she kept going on that back and forth of, I want to be open. No, I don't want to be open. I want to be open. Her final thing on it was, I don't want to be open.
Okay.
And when you come back, I want to be in a relationship with you.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
So, and I didn't, the nature of my conversations with Sam were not in any way like sexual. It was more of just like, he sort of knew what was going on in this relationship, was, calling me to check up to make sure everything was okay. But obviously there's an emotional, feeling involved.
Yeah.
And I didn't stop it because I, number one, like I said, felt trapped, and I felt feelings for both of them. I really did. But I think that if I was going to get out at any point and do it in a healthy way, it would have been right there. But I didn't do that. And I'm not going to try and say that it's all her fault, because I felt, she made me feel XYZ sort of way. I mean, her truth, I can't speak for her as far as what she would have said about the situation, but I'm sure that she had a very good, explanation for whatever was going on in her mind.
Yeah.
And I don't want to discredit that, in any way. Yeah. And I'm sure her story about, everything that happened in our relationship is completely different to mine. And I want to be not different, but, the way that she felt is going to be different than the way that I felt.
Yeah. And obviously that ties into your first lesson. There's two truths to every experience.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And, the funny thing is, after all of these horrible things that happened to the both of us in this relationship, we're actually still very good friends, which a lot of people are surprised by. So, I mean, it's a very long-winded story. And so we just worked on it. She has a new partner who becomes relevant later because I was cheated on again with this person. Yeah.
Okay. That was gonna be one of my questions, to say, okay, so we had got to the point where she's starting to say, look, let's get back. You're battling, feeling trapped. Sounds to me like you eventually said, okay, let's give this a shot. Let's keep this going.
Yeah.
And then she cheated on you again.
Well, so that happened maybe like a year or two later. But basically,
how did you find out?
So before I tell that story, she actually found out about Sam and what had happened.
How?
So on Valentine's Day, actually, if you can believe it, on that day, I remember that day very vividly because I was just feeling so horrible. I was trying to get to my track practice. I was a track runner, and I said to her, listen, I have to go to practice, and I don't mean to like throw this bomb on you, but I can't do this anymore. I'm feeling so trapped. I feel horrible. And so she starts pulling on my leg, not letting me leave the room. And she goes, I can't let you leave here, if we're not going to be together. And at this point, I'm already on thin ice with my team because I'm late to all of my practices because of these explosive arguments that we were having.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, okay, we'll talk about this later. She goes, but we're together, right? We're together. We're still together.
Oh my gosh.
And the only thing that I had the strength to say was, yes, we're still together. And I should have gotten up the strength to say something else. But when you're in that, situation of survival mode, that's what I'll call it.
Yeah.
You just do whatever feels good for you in that 1 second because you just have to survive. You just have to get out. And So I'm at my track practice, then I go get dinner with my friends. I had, there was like some event going on at our school. So I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a few hours with my friends, but it's also Valentine's Day. I want to be cognizant of that, even though all of this is going on.
Mm.
And I get back to my room, and she's in my room. And I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah.
And she had gone through she knew my passwords to my laptop and to my social media. So she went into my Facebook, which is how I've been communicating with Sam, and read all of my messages.
Yeah.
And so she found out. But she didn't tell me at first that she had found out. So I thought everything was okay. And then she looks at me dead in the eye and goes, "Did you cheat on me?" And I said, "No, I didn't cheat on you." Which was a lie, because I feel like emotional cheating is also like not stopping to, me still talking to Sam, in my opinion,
yeah,
is a cheating, right?
Yeah,
and I know that now.
Mm.
But I was in it, and I didn't, I wasn't processing all those things.
I don't know about you and Sam, hey?
Okay.
Because I'll be very honest here.
Mm-hmm.
Sam to me feels like that friend who was filling an emotional gap that you had.
Yeah.
That needed filling.
Absolutely.
He doesn't feel like a romantic lover.
I mean, I think even the fact that he felt romance and I was sort of using that as a gap that I needed to fill, it doesn't matter. As long as he felt that, I was still doing something wrong. I'm not going to, I did feel like a romantic connection, but I think looking back on it now, it was really to fill that need of like, oh my God, I feel so,
you feel alive. Yeah.
Yeah. And you need somebody to, I needed somebody in that moment to make me feel like my feelings of feeling trapped were valid, because I was also I feel like gaslit to the point of like my feelings weren't valid, and that I was selfish, and that I was a horrible person for not spending time with her when she needed me. But she found out, obviously was calm for 2 seconds, and then absolutely exploded on me.
Yeah.
Like told me the things that she said. I was the most disgusting human alive, that I didn't deserve to be alive. And I was, like I said, I was like battling some chronic health issues, but they were exacerbated by like stress and stressful environments. Mm-mm. So I was throwing up everywhere as she's yelling at me. And also I had a condition where I would like continually faint for no reason.
Yeah.
And so I was like fainting, getting up, like her, like basically like nursing me back to health so that she could yell at me.
Oh my gosh.
And, it was horrible. She said, I never want to talk to you again. You're the most horrible person alive. I introduced you to my family, and you do this to me. Not normal language, but hurtful language, because she was so hurt about what I did.
I'm really struggling with how she was making you feel, because remember, you sacrificed your own happiness just to get back with her. In fact, you didn't forgive her. You chose to forget.
Yeah.
Right? And you never brought it back to her ever. And then she has this explosive reaction when she's done the same thing to 2 other people before.
Yeah.
Just ain't right.
Yeah, it's not right. It wasn't right at all. But I also heard you say that I didn't bring it up about what had happened with my best friend and her. I did. When we would argue, I would definitely bring it up. So I wasn't innocent in that, I definitely brought it up as something that I was struggling with. And she was like, well, you can't move on. Like our relationship is struggling because you can't move on from this thing that happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not really fair because I'm allowed to struggle with it.
Yeah.
But she told me that she basically didn't want anything to do with me. And I respected it. I respected that decision, because I was like, wow, I am.
I needed this as well, because you needed that break, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was when we took this break, I felt better, but I also felt this immense amount of guilt because of the language that she had been using. And, I also was to the point I was like struggling. I was not losing friends, but spending less and less time with my friends because of this relationship. So now I'm feeling like the one who needs a relationship or needs her in some way because I'm struggling with my friendships because of the relationship, right? But I'm feeling that like, okay, well, if we're not together, what am I going to do? And so again, and also, so I tried to leave it. I tried to be like, okay, well, you're mad at me. You let me know when you're ready. But she would show up to my room, into my space and yell at me and try and argue with me. And then I would be like, no, your feelings are valid. I'm really sorry. I messed up. And then she goes, so what are you going to do about it? And I'd be like, well, if you don't want to be with me, then we don't have to be together. And she'd be like, oh, that is like, use language like, oh, that's all you're going to say really shows how much you cared about me in the first place. Right. So constantly being gaslit.
Talk about a toxic, vicious cycle.
Oh, it was one of the most toxic relationships I've ever been in. And so, but details aside, we moved on from that, and we're together, for a year and a bit more, I think.
Damn.
But it was by no means happy at all. But I also found out that while I was in when she went to that different country while we were in her respective countries, she went with the intent of basically being with this other person that she had been with previously. Wow. It's a different person. So I found out that she was really angry at me for what I'd done with Sam, but she basically was doing the same thing at the same time.
Did you not have been told before that sometimes somebody's reaction to something is a reflection of what they've been up to?
Of what they've been up to, exactly. So when I found out, I was actually very calm.
Why were you so calm?
I think I had just been hurt by this person so many times that I was like, I'm numb inside. I don't feel anything,
Yeah.
And I said, I never want to talk to you ever again. But again, she begged me to stay and was like, well, now we're even.
Wow.
That was the language, right? And I believed her.
What do you mean you believed her? I mean, this is all for her, this is all an emotional game. I scored a point, so I got one up on you. Now you get an opportunity to match up and get to the same level.
Yep. And then, basically we spent a summer together in a different country. We both ended up having jobs in the same country, which I know people would be like, oh, didn't you guys try and end up in the same countries? No, really. We just both have similar ties to similar countries because I'm not just from the US.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we ended up working in the same countries.
Yeah.
And basically we had this summer of healing together. It was just her and I outside of our university campus. And we weren't, in a strict relationship. We just, again, were just taking it slow, figuring each other out again, in a way that was away from our friends, that didn't make us feel like we had to be in anything or do anything. And so I would say, and there's obviously a lot of details there, but I think the main thing out of that was we had this summer of like healing together. And we went back to our college campus again and started, fresh. But again, when you have so many problems like we did, it lasted maybe a week or two.
Oh, this is nuts.
Before we really were in a bad spot. And I actually am going to shift and say that the problem started with me. I was in such a bad place that I was so resentful.
Yeah.
That I just hated seeing her. Anytime I would see her, I'd be in a bad mood. I yelled a lot. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. And it started to take a toll on her. I could tell,
Yeah.
but it was just this like regurgitation of all of the harm and the, shame and guilt that I felt.
Yeah.
Basically being projected onto her.
Yes.
And I saw her basically withering, away because of the things that, the similar language of like, she would say to me, like, you're not deserving to be in this relationship with me because of what you did. I basically used the same narrative. I turned it around onto her because I was in such a bad place, which is not an excuse, by any means.
Yeah.
But I think it sort of helps one understand where I was at. and my emotional state. And so we basically spent the better part of 8 months, maybe, like that. But still, we decided, okay, we're going to be fine. Let's sign a lease together.
Oh, come on!
I know. I tell this story, like, what was I thinking? What was I doing?
Lerato, I'm really trying to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I get a lot of the stuff that stopped you from disconnecting, and it's a very real thing that you had to be careful of.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, I was afraid. Yeah.
At some point, couldn't you have got some form of external help to say, hey, I'm in this situation. I need help. How can I deal with this?
Yeah, and a lot of my friends tried. I have amazing friends. I think that they really helped me in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But whenever you're in a situation like that, nobody really understands the nuances except for those two involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you just tell this story, exactly how I'm telling it, any outsider would be like, "What the F
exactly.
were you guys doing?"
Yeah, I mean, but if you're in the situation, you never really see it like that, do you?
It's very different. Right. And even me now, I'm like, what the F was I doing? But basically, long story short, we signed this lease. And then I find out that she had been cheating on me again with a different person. And that was my final straw. I absolutely lost it. Like, you'll ask my friends, because they were a few of them were living next to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like screaming I had this it was like a snap, like a breakdown. It's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't with this person. Like, I'm so unhappy. She's unhappy. We are not good together. I need to get the hell out of here. And so finally I picked up all of my things, and my really good friends were like, just come and stay in my room. Don't even tell her where you went. Just pick up your things and go.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did. And there was, a few weeks back and forth of like, no, please take me back, all of these things, even though she'd actually been starting a relationship with a new person who she's still dating now. And, in the back of my mind, I was like, do I want to even try and make this work? I really don't. But also, we've signed a lease together. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And we basically left it as she went away for the summer again, and I stayed in the apartment that we had signed a lease on.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us we grew separately. She would check in with me every now and then to kind of be like, I still love you, all of these things, but I knew that she was developing this relationship with somebody else. So I was sort of like, oh, you have somebody else now that's going to meet your needs or whatever, so that you're being much more gentle, like, with me.
And possibly she was just making sure that if things didn't work out with that person, she knew that you were kosher to come back. Yeah.
And when she was finally settled in that other relationship, that was when she just completely let go of me like it was nothing.
Jesus.
Yeah. And and then when she came back, we tried to live together, the two of us, but it was bad. It was bad. And I had actually developed, I was seeing somebody else. And so I moved out of that apartment, and her girlfriend, they wanted me to move out so the two of them could move in together. I felt sort of slighted by that because I put the space together, all of these things. But I was like, you know what, actually, this would be very good for the both of us to have our space. So I moved out, and we really liked each other as people, which I know sounds hard to believe.
No, do you know, it's actually not that difficult to believe, because I know a few people who've become boyfriend and girlfriend when they should have just remained as very close friends.
Yes, and we discussed that.
Yeah, and it feels like that's what happened with you guys.
Yeah, and I'm not going to diminish the amount of love that I had for her.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. I love her very much, not in a romantic way at all. But I think that she is one of the most resilient, lovely people that I have. I'm privileged to know her. I feel that way.
And I hope you give yourself the same credit, because you are resilient to have dealt with all of that stuff. And still have all of your shit together today. You're equally resilient.
Thank you. But yeah, so I'm friends with her and her current partner. me and her current partner aren't like best friends by any means, but anytime I do something with Cedar, I always invite her partner. I've had them over for dinner, she feels...
You don't feel jealous of them?
No, I actually, I thought that I would, because I feel like I was slighted out of my apartment.
Yeah.
But I actually feel so happy because she's actually in a relationship that I believe for the very first time is healthy.
And also, in the same breath, you're no longer trapped.
I don't feel trapped. I feel so free.
Yeah.
I feel like I learned so much from being in a relationship with her. Now, like, if I see any signs of bullshit with somebody, I'm like, no, get out of my space. I don't care.
Once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I learned so much, and we talk about, she and I have talked about it. I'm like, I'm really sorry for the harm that I caused you. I really am, because I see how I triggered you, and I see what I did. And I want to be respectful, and I want to let her step into her truth and like let that sun shine on her face, because she deserves that. But it doesn't take away from, the trauma that was caused on my end.
Of course.
I think I'm forever changed from this experience, but I'm in no way afraid of her now. I think like there was space because it was so traumatic, that if I saw her, I could be really afraid of her, and she could be very afraid of me, but we've moved past that.
Yeah.
And I just think that, she's so lovely, but we just weren't meant to be together. We were just too different.
I'm just processing all of that and thinking at the top of my mind, this has got to be one of the biggest emotional roller coasters I've been on an episode.
Well, I apologize taking you on a roller coaster.
No need to apologize, because it's just reaffirmation for me, that people's situations are so different.
Yeah.
And there's just no room or scope to ever be judgmental, because you don't know what somebody has been through.
Exactly.
The only three things that I would say for you, but which I know you've done already, is one, forgive yourself, because what happened with Sam and stuff was just you trying to be okay with what was happening.
Yeah.
So if anything that comes out of the situation with you and Cedar, I hope you're forgiving yourself and recognize that you're actually okay. And then secondly, that you're in a good position to redraw boundaries, because I think what's really important from what happened in your situation with Cedar is everything was quite fluid. It was kind of go with the flow. Somebody dictates the pace of stuff, and you're like, yeah, okay, let's be open. Okay, let's not be open. Okay, let's be open.
Right.
Be in a position to redraw those boundaries. And, last but not least, take back your story.
Yeah.
With what was happening with Sam, you were in a really good position to say, I'm feeling trapped. I need to let you know that I have an emotional void that you're not filling. Can you fill that gap for me? Can we do something to make that happen?
Yeah. Yep. I think that I've done a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of that work. And I think just speaking this all out today has also really helped me. I will always feel some sort of level of guilt and shame for just how I treated another human being.
Of course,
I think that's my big thing.
Yeah.
I never want to be the reason for somebody's sadness at all. And I think that I was for a little with Cedar. But I'm so happy that we're both now in very good places. It makes me smile every time she tells me something good that, that's happened to her. And, we keep in touch, but not in any way that feels, like a boundary.
Of course.
And yeah,
man, I am grateful that you shared this story. Honestly,
thank you so much for having me.
I really know somebody's gonna benefit from this, because I've been in a situation where I felt emotionally trapped as well.
Yeah,
and I can relate to this thing that somebody tries to kill themselves, because they did once. They tried. They took a whole heap of tablets. And I happened to be in the kitchen, and I tried to gouge them out. Yeah, I think one or two may have gone down, but they were paracetamol. So if anything, if they were feeling some kind of pain, they had the benefit of pain being dulled for a little bit.
Right.
And I remember constantly feeling trapped in terms of, man, what can I do?
Yeah.
Eventually some stuff happened, and then we weren't together anymore, and I felt that relief.
Yeah.
So this, I'm confident, is going to help someone. So thank you very much for making time to share so openly what happened with you and your partner.
Thank you.
And just to do a recap for those who are listening to this episode of The Feeling Station, lesson number 1 was there are 2 truths to every experience. Lesson number 2, don't seek external validation for internal needs. Don't use relationships to fill gaps with things unmet in your own life. Third lesson, don't be afraid to leave a situation that doesn't fill your cup. And last but not least, recognize patterns. What your gut tells you is usually correct. You've been listening to another episode of The Feeling Station. I'm your host, Tinto, and I look forward to catching you in next week's episode. Peace.
Oh, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're feeling. Now that it's over.
Let
me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about my feelings, yeah.
Rudoi motoru noto kujidziro amai.
Kujidziro amai. Love is a fire.
Rudoi motoru noto kujidziro amai.